Hey, welcome to the very first episode of Dan Time. I'm your host, Dan McArdle. You're here. You made it. You're back. You're back. You showed up. You followed through. You heard something on the trailer that made you think, okay, all right, I'll check it out. I'll give it one shot. I'll see what it's all about. Or, all right, I know Dan. I know Dan from somewhere. This is interesting. I got 15 minutes. I'll burn it on his show. Well, you're going to be glad you did. You came to the right place. And this show, like I said on the trailer, is going to deliver impactful guests on a weekly basis that mostly happen to be named Dan. You're going to laugh. You're going to think. You're going to draw on some old experiences. You're going to draw some inspiration from these guests. For week one, now this is something that just happened in the past 24 hours. We had a schedule change. My first guest, I'm going to have to move to week 2. Won't get into the details, but that left an opening with about a 24-hour window to fill it. And I was in a little bit of a predicament, but I thought, okay, option A is to move the start back 1 week. Don't want to do it. Do not want to do it. We're going to be consistent. Option B would be to scramble and try to find any Dan, any old Dan at the last second. I walk into a store and see a guy with a name tag that says Dan. Hey, you look like you'd be a good guest for Dan Time. Come on. Let's do it here. Let's do it on the spot. You got 15 minutes? So that was not an option. So in order to keep this thing going in the direction that I had planned on, I had one call to make, one phone call. You've been there. You know who it is. You know who you need when it's go time and something has fallen through. Who's that person in your life? You know who it is. For me, for this show, for right now, that person was Jim Powell. Jim Powell, ladies and gentlemen. Not a household name unless you grew up around us 20 years ago, 15, 16 years ago, but a massive presence. A giant of a man, a heart of gold, the guy that I asked to marry me and my wife almost 5 years ago. Jim Powell. This is a guy that I spent several years working in the service industry alongside. Admittedly spent a few late nights with Jim Powell. Jim and I have been through a lot together. And in the past 10 years, because we were best friends in Birmingham, and for the past 10 years, we have not physically been around each other, and with the advent of smartphones, I'm sure you can relate, you don't talk on the phone a lot, even with a very close friend. We're texting most of the time with a lot of people. So Jim and I, back in 2005 and 6 and 7 and certainly 02, 03, a lot of phone calls. A lot of, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? What are you doing tonight? What's going on this weekend? Watching a game and picking up the phone and calling and talking about it. So to have this conversation with Jim was really special because we just don't get to do it very often anymore. So luckily, I asked him to step in, and of course he said yes. Of course he said yes. What I was wanting to do was to more or less save Jim Powell for like a bonus episode. I mean, this is, in my opinion, such an A-lister that I wanted to keep him in the back pocket and probably, pull him out in a year or two. That's how important. That's how highly I think of this guy. So obviously with someone that you're very close with and you go back a couple decades or even 5 or 10 years, there's a lot of inside jokes, a lot of anecdotes that only you two remember. I kept that in mind and I realized, hey, this is a broad audience. We're not going to walk down every one of those paths because we're just going to lose the average listener. So you'll see here, I hope, that we spared you some of that stuff. And a couple times it just comes out because it naturally does with the two of us. But you're going to enjoy this episode. So I tried to avoid it. I wanted to stack the deck with Dan's, and instead, we're going to start out with it's still a 3-letter name, Jim. I call him Gimmie sometimes, but this is Jim, and he knows about Dan time. He knows about Dan time. I let him off the hook. Or maybe I let myself off the hook. You'll see in this conversation, I did not ask him, what does Dan time mean to you? He knows exactly what it means. Trust me. He knows exactly what Dan time means or what it once meant. So we didn't cover it. So we'll see how much of a cliffhanger we can make this thing. We're both huge Cubs fans. We did not talk about the Chicago Cubs. Really should have. They are 4 games over 500 at this point in August, and just having a pretty exciting second half. And we didn't touch on that, but that's okay. Another thing you'll notice, and I want to quote my dad here. My dad's got a lot of great lines, and when you're 10 years old, you think that he came up with all of them. You don't realize that some things are just kind of in the vernacular, but maybe he didn't come up with this one either, but I like to think that they're mostly original. Done is better than perfect. Done is better than perfect. You'll notice that Jim's audio quality is much stronger than mine. And there's a reason for that. There's a switch that I didn't flip, and it caused some degradation in the quality of my microphone. I listened to it. It bothered me a little bit, but we're going to move forward. The conversation is great. That's what we're here for. So you're going to love this episode. I'm not going to continue talking here. If you like Dan Time, if you want to reach out to the show, to me, you can reach me at dantimepod@gmail.com. I'm on all the socials, at dantimepod on X. There's the Facebook page. There's Instagram, dantimepod. Enjoy this conversation with me and Jim Powell. You're going to love it. Thanks for listening to Dan Time. Jim, how are you doing, man?
Man, Dan, I am fantastic. I am thrilled to be the first guest on a podcast dedicated to Dan speaking with other Dans. The irony is not lost on me. I love it. My wife's maiden name was Daniel, and I think that qualifies me. And my first name is 3 letters, just like Dan. So I think that's good enough for me and should be good enough for your listeners. And if they have a problem with it, they have your Twitter.
Well, listen, you're checking enough boxes there. I would be lying if I said that I'm not slightly disappointed that we didn't save you for a bonus episode, or this was 24 hours ago. Jim Powell was not going to be the kickoff guest on Dan Time. I mean, why would you be? I did not bill it to be somebody other than a Dan. I've been basically been lying to my listeners. I mean, those 2 people out there been like, for at least
those 2 people out there
for the past week. I mean, I've been promoting. I've been tweeting or zeeting or whatever they call it.
Are you going to have to go into hiding when this drops for fear of repercussions that your listeners will revolt because you're not having a Dan on to start Dan Time?
I think we're not barely making liftoff here. I mean, this thing is DOA, Jim.
No, it's not. This is fantastic.
All credibility has been lost.
No, this is great. You're Dan, and so this is Time with Dan. Dan Time. If people get dual Dans, that's just a bonus.
Well, listen. So Quim and I, we go back. We go back over 20 years. So we graduated high school together. We became really close pals in the early 2000s, and back then we always talked on the phone. I probably called Jim Powell daily, usually after hours. Usually, hey, what are you doing tonight? And so for those of you listening who may be 27 years old or even 34 years old, and you really don't have any experience with this, you kind of had to do it out of necessity. In some ways, I miss it. In other ways, when you picked up the phone to call your buddy to see what was going on that weekend or that night, you're not staring forlornly into a blue screen, typing out a message that, is pretty straightforward, or you're saying, hey, man, what's going on? But, you just get animated. And I'm rambling here, Jim, but that's what we used to do, and we don't really. You and I don't talk anymore like we used to. This is a real treat for me, even though, like I said, I couldn't deliver a Dan out the gate. Ladies and gentlemen, this is by far the next best thing.
Absolutely, the next best thing to another Dan Quayle, or Dan Deerdorf, as you've said in the past. And of course, the Mount Rushmore the head at the top is your boy Dan Marino. So I'm happy just to be here, and love speaking to you about things that are going on in the Daniverse, as it were. So I'm happy to talk to you as long as you'll have me. And again, I'm just honored to be your first guest. And I'm sorry to everybody who comes after me, because they're going to have a whole lot to live up to. Big shoes to fill.
There you go. Well,
yeah.
And you would think that starting a show called Dan Time, that I would just have Dans from near and far just beating down my door, trying to get on, trying to get on the show. And maybe I had a little bit of that expectation. Not that they'd come out of the Woodworth. What did I say? Woolworth?
Woolworths, the old drugstore from the Five and Dime. They haven't come out of the Woolworths.
There's episode.
Woodworth.
Another episode idea.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, well, I'll just kind of reach up and grab a Dan, and we'll have an episode. Folks, let me tell you, if you're thinking about starting something like this, and your name is Josh, or your name is Susan, or whatever, they're just not. People like to talk. People like to be heard. People aren't just crazy about being recorded, though.
Probably a little. I'm proud of you for just approaching, every Dan on the street you come across and asking them to be on a podcast with you.
And trust, me, I'll do it. The thought crossed my mind this week because I had a late cancellation, which is no big deal. This guy you're going to love our first Dan out the gate. But I thought, okay, if I go to the store, if I go to Dollar General or something, and I see a name tag, and that name tag says Dan, I am pitching this guy about being on the show.
Oh, sure. The light would shine down. Angels would sing. It would be kismet.
You better believe it. But no, this is going to be fun. And Jim, what better way to start off than to have you here? You married my wife and I. We worked some of our best years, our formative years, our wasted youth time period. We worked together in an awesome pizza restaurant, Mellow Mushroom, which regionally some of you might be familiar with. Jim, let's kind of jump off right there, and I've got a lot of things I want to hit on, but Mellow Mushroom. When was the last time you ate there? Oh, my
goodness. We ate there, maybe 2 weeks ago. They opened a second location down on Highway 280 down yonder, and we just happened to go in there. We love it. My daughter is just enraptured with their pretzels with beer cheese, which is not the beer cheese we didn't have when we worked there. But their beer cheese dipping sauce is outstanding. That's literally one of the 4 food groups for my daughter, along with real pizza, chicken nuggets, and Texas toast.
Does she ever take a carrot or a celery stick and scoop ranch and basically use that vegetable as a vehicle to just get ranch?
If good parents would probably have worked that in with their kids. We were not able to do that. She may use a piece of pizza crust and dip it in ranch, but she never would she put a carrot or a piece of celery in ranch and eat it. She is not a vegetable eater, unfortunately. We failed in that category, but yeah, she'll eat some fruits, but yeah, Mellow Mushroom is one of her faves.
Let's stay on target here with Mellow Mushroom. We're not going to sit here very long, but Mellow Mushroom Pizza Bakers. I mean, I didn't know I'd be plugging them, but tell me your thoughts when you think about 2002. I think you started in 01 there, and I came on in 02. But what do you remember? What's your takeaway from that time period?
Well, I mean, I loved it. I'm obviously super fond of it and have fond memories because I met my wife there. It's also, we had with New Girl, we had very little turnover. I felt like even for that time. And nowadays you go down to South Side or just about anywhere in the country, and there's these, boutique pizza places. Back in 2002 when Mellow Mushroom came in, it was the spot. You didn't have Slice or any of these other hundreds of, like I said, boutique pizza places. You had at that time, you had all the chains: Papa John's, Caesar's, Pizza Hut, Domino's, and then when Mellow Mushroom came, it was like, wow, you can go eat pizza, have beer, different crazy toppings, artichokes, spinach. It was different. So the restaurant was really cool. The vibe was cool. Southside was still a really happening
when
place.
Jim says Southside, it's the South Side of Birmingham, Alabama. It's I haven't been down there in quite some time, but 20 years ago, it was a hot spot. It was a fun place to be. We were right across the street from a dance club that was fun, Jim. Remember when we closed down the restaurant and just people watch?
Yeah, just people watch out on the porch with the lights off was just a highlight of every day. And yeah, it was just a great place to work. Kelly and I went through, my wife, and thought about it one day, like the amount of couples and kids that came from people that worked there. I think there's like 10 kids from people that met at Mellow Mushroom back in that day. I think it was unique in that way, and it was a real family atmosphere, and still talk to some of those people regularly. Everybody show up.
There you go.
The owner was great. Yeah. Big fan of his. He was the father of the two guys who originally opened it. He was real hands-on and just a great guy, as were the two original owners. But yeah, I loved it down there, man. Got to meet you, good friends for life. So it was just a fun time.
One thing I'll keep coming back to this in other future episodes of Dan Time, but is the topic of service and the interest in service. And Jim, you're like me. You've always been in some kind of role where service is at the forefront, and it calls on your skills to relate to people, empathize with people, understand people's needs, and care about what you're doing. Even back then, when we were college students, and like you said, we're kind of got one eye peeled and in this direction of going out and doing these things and hanging out with friends. But can you remember even back then where it was important to you when you showed up at work to, hey, I'm gonna do a good job tonight? And how do you relate that back then and where your head was versus today?
Like with the staff of restaurants currently when I go in and have
or just like how you feel about how you go about your business. We won't really talk a lot about your day-to-day life in that regard. Do you still have this? Do you still carry that mindset of service?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're dealing with the public or dealing with other people in your industry or in business, you want to be as professional as possible and as approachable as possible, and just want to get out there and shake hands and kiss babies as much as possible, and service, and the service industry has changed a lot in the past 20 years, just from us going out to restaurants. Now there's still great servers, but there's also a lot of people who, I don't know,
don't seem to care.
Maybe sometimes. Yeah. But that could have been the same way back then. We weren't the ones going to restaurants. We were the ones working in restaurants. So back then there could have been people who said, 20 years, 1980s, they weren't like that, so I don't know. Everything, it's always, there's always going to be older folks that say things were better back in their day, and there's always going to be younger folks who say that they're just crotchety and need to get over it. But yeah, I think, don't know how to segue that into something else, but I think that service today is a little different than it was back then.
Yeah, I do see it. And when I see, I don't know if you're this way, and maybe this is me becoming like the dad at the restaurant that's saying, "What's your name, young lady?" With the
yeah.
But when you notice someone that's going the extra mile, maybe there's an ice cream store here locally that I'll take the kids to, and there's this really nice teenage guy that's like, he started telling me about what he wants to do after high school. I take notice of some of those people that are working in service roles and seem like they care about what they're doing.
Oh yeah, they stand out for sure.
So that's one thing I'll touch on with each guest as we go along. Another thing with you, Jim, and we'll get back to some specifics here in a minute, but a consistently positive outlook, no matter what's going on. I think you as my friend over the years, you've been through a lot. You've been through a lot of things that I probably haven't even heard about. But you always seem to put a good face, even on a bad situation, as they say. Is there anything that you do in particular that keeps driving that positive attitude or that interest in just succeeding?
Ooh, that's a good question, Danimal. I don't.
Or do you?
It's always easier to say just look on the bright side, than to do it sometimes. But I was raised by a lady, my mom, who's wonderful. Always did everything with a smile. I only remember her one time ever getting so mad that she swore, and it was when I was a little jerk and didn't want to go to church like 4 weeks in a row, and she finally threw her hands up and was like, "Then fine, you don't have to go." So, but I imagine it's just learned behavior. Being a dad and raising kids, man. Kids and eventually young adults and adults are a big reflection of what they learned as children and what they saw as children. And so, I appreciate you saying that, and I would attribute, my attitude to my parents and how I was raised and the people I was raised around, and learned a long time ago that, if you can't laugh at yourself, you're going to be miserable,
What a great line.
Yeah, well, you gotta be, you gotta be happy. I do not think that way about myself personally. I sometimes feel like I'm just a storm cloud, but maybe that's inward and I'm a little too hard
One
on
thing I
myself.
always thought was just, it's hilarious on one end and very unique on another. A lot of people don't know this because the world just doesn't know about Jim Powell. That's what I'm trying to improve upon here.
Yes,
But
gym
over the
time.
years, Jim, I don't know if you still do this. I started to notice that you had a different expression in almost every picture that you'd be captured in, whether it was with me or another group of friends. And I don't know if that was like deliberate or your thing, but I just thought that was so cool. And it kind of speaks to, here's a guy who does not take himself too seriously. It is hard in
Yeah.
this world, I think, now to be more relaxed. Don't take yourself so seriously. Don't worry about what people are thinking about you. It's probably particularly hard on
Hmm.
teenagers. And when my kids get
Oh yeah.
get older and start going through middle school, and to just, oh, don't worry about what they say. I think that was a lot easier when we were growing up. And when we were growing up, it wasn't that easy. But it's hard. I think
Yeah.
it's really hard now, but you really have just embodied that quality, and is one of the reasons why you're one of my closest friends. That's a. I'm getting real close to the edge here, Jim. So we're not.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah,
No
I appreciate. I mean,
waterfalls.
I'm just sitting here blushing and wiping away. There's cutting onions in here. I'm so appreciative. Thank you for bringing me on. This has been a real boost to my
You didn't know this was
confidence.
coming, did you?
I no, thank you. This is what Dan Time's going to be every week. You can have me as a guest, twice a week. I'm fine with that. But yeah, you're too kind, and I'd say the same about you, man. And I was friends are very important to me because I'm not an only child, but my brother and sister were a good bit older than me. So much older that I really don't remember them living in the same house. They were 14 and 12 years older than me. So, and I had cousins, but they lived far away. That we weren't in the same city. And so once I started making friends when we moved back to Birmingham in second grade, friends from then on were just really important to me because they were like family. So it's always been important to me that my friends are happy and that I surround myself with, mostly positive people.
That's especially as you move along in life. I think it's as important as ever. And there's almost a point where you have to make that split with maybe a pack of friends or a group that you enjoy being around, where you have to say, all right, who's going places and who's not. If,
Yeah. Or just going different
yeah,
directions.
or
Yeah.
really in the age that we live in with FaceTime and group text, you can get out of your hometown. I know not everybody, I did, but you don't have to. But if some people are considering it and you have the means, like if you're still single and you're just running around with the same three or four people, and let's just say they're not doing anything productive, and you go and hang out with them and they don't have anything uplifting to really talk about. And this is me
Hmm.
speaking to the listeners, to both you guys.
All
Get
too
out of that
many.
and think about, make a
Yeah.
plan about how you're going to get out of it. Don't just say, "Oh, it'd be really nice to move to Nashville. Oh, maybe I'll do that next year, or maybe I'll think about that." Make a plan in small steps. But you really don't even have to move. You don't have to move to another state or or move from a physical address. Sometimes it's just changing a job and figuring out what are the little steps that I can take that I could just start making this happen. But I'll talk about that
Mm-hmm.
more in future episodes. But yeah, Jim, I've always just found you to be someone, and you're probably a little too hard on yourself in that regard, but that people are drawn to. You seem to have an easy ability to just talk to the guy in the street, which is something that I really seek out in friends. Is uh, if we're out somewhere and all of a sudden I turn around and say, "Where's Jim? Where'd he go?" And then you're across the let's say the bar, and you're just like standing there talking to someone that I don't recognize, and it's been going on for 12 minutes. Like that's a good quality.
Well,
There's an interesting story, and
it's
well, you may have a few of them, but haven't there been some public figures that you've seen out in public and said, "Hey, man, not so much can I get your autograph, but or any story like that you want to talk about?"
oh yeah. I talked about it on the podcast I have or used to our on hiatus podcast, Gimme 10. But we were in me and a couple of our friends went to Nashville to watch a Titans game. And so after the game, we had to stop at White Castle because we don't have those here in Alabama for our for the Dan Time international listeners. And White Castle is just a miniature slider burger place. And they basically have two tables. It's all order and then stand there and wait. And my goodness, the wait it feels like 30 minutes when you've had 4 beers at the Titans game. And so we're standing there, and after we order, I look over my shoulder, and it's James Carville, who I'm sure I know JT on our podcast episode had no clue, but he's a political pundit. He used to work for Clinton, right?
I think anybody that's younger than 42 probably it's not a household name, but
No, but he's he's wasn't his wife conservative, and he was pretty
yeah,
liberal,
it
and
was an odd pair.
they have a debate show or something, or you'd know the guy though. He's super. I think he's from Louisiana. He's from Louisiana. He was decked out in LSU gear because LSU had played Vanderbilt
If your
the day
dad
before.
had CNN on in your house during the Clinton administration, you've heard of this guy,
Yes.
which my dad did.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah. And so I was like, James Carville, and he was like, yes. How are you? And I was like, good.
He's
man.
captive. He's
big
waiting on
fan.
his burgers. He cannot get away.
Yeah. He can't. Yeah, he can't. It's a tiny restaurant. He can't get his drink. So and like I said, I'd had a couple drinks at the Titans game and was even more open to social interaction. So I was just chatting him up, and for the first couple minutes it was okay, but then when it was done, he basically did the whole full 3/4 body turn away from me to just look at the wall. So I kind of got the hint and just stopped talking. But yeah, I loved seeing him, and yeah, seeing random folks out, famous people is always fun.
I always wonder, like some people that talk for a living, they're analysts, they're on TV a lot, or they're on radio. I don't know. Maybe there's some of them that like to just talk nonstop, and they'll engage everyone on the street. And there's probably others who are like, let me just get my to-go order here from Applebee's and just get out of here.
Yeah, leave me alone. Well, again, he was nice. But heck, I don't like talking to you say that I like talking to random people. It depends on if they have something interesting to say. So he probably gets tired of just every rando coming up. I don't know if you watch, and well, actually I know you do, because I sent you the first season DVD, but Impractical Jokers.
Oh my God!
Just in the past year or so, when that show's popularity has exploded, I get told once a week that I look like the fat guy Sal from that show, and I am just so over being told that I look like him. It's the first time in my life I've ever been, had a celebrity doppelganger, and so I was always wondered, because I would tell people they look like somebody and it would frustrate them. Like our friend Dave would get so tired of people telling me look like Russell Crowe. And this was when Russell Crowe was a good looking dude, 20 years ago. I was like, man, better Russell Crowe than John Lovitz or something,
That's a great example. It's hard to think of celebrities where across the board, if you were to say to your friend, hey, you look just like Sandra Bullock, there's like probably 5 or 10% of them where it's just an automatic compliment. And then there's like the vast majority, you would think that would be cool for that person, but
people do not like it. You could say, man, you look like Brad Pitt. They're like, shut up, I've been told that. It's like, it's better than Sal from Impractical Jokers, the fat guy with the
now see,
bad hair.
I recognized that 10, 12 years ago, and I'm like, that kind of looks like Jim. But I was like, man, that'd be kind of cool, but it's not, it's not me, so I'm not comparing myself. I haven't gotten too many of those celebrity comparisons.
Who have you gotten? You've gotten some before,
a long time ago. I think somebody, when I was working at TGI Fridays, mentioned Ewan McGregor. I don't know if he's what that guy does anymore, but I got that once.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a good one. Yeah, he's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Other than that,
that's a good one, Dan.
Rick Smits, maybe, from the
the Flying Dutchman.
No,
you did
never
not.
got
You're
that
just
one. You guys always
Detlef Shrimp.
Yeah.
Detlef Shrimp.
Man, a lot of those guys.
Rick
a lot of good memories there. Jim, we got to touch on the Gimme 10 podcast, and this is something that I've. If you guys are following me on X, I just posted about Gimme 10. This is worth checking out. I don't think is out to a broad audience either, but if you enjoy listening to two guys just sit around and talk about a bag of peanuts, you're not expecting that it's going to be funny, but give one of these episodes a shot. Just one. The great thing here, and you'll see if you go to their Spotify link, the last episode says, "This is the end." Now, in most cases, that's pretty declarative. It's over. But and we may clear up some rumor here that we may have a fall to 2023 return of Gimme 10. Before I get confirmation on that, let me just kind of pop off a few of these episode titles. Christmas gifts, movie theaters, Halloween candy in 2 parts. There's a part 1 and part 2 Halloween candy episode. Cobra Kai. There is the 80s.
Great episode. They Might Be Giants.
Some of these odd, like cultural, musical footnotes in history, they're just peppered in here. One of my favorites was the birthdays episode. I think that's one of the later ones. Of course, I recommended way back drywall repair, and they actually jumped on it and did an episode on drywall repair. But Jim,
we did. Dan said he could listen to us talk about anything, even drywall repair. So the follow-up episode was about drywall repair, and it was exhilarating.
Jim, if you could confirm or deny the rumor that you guys are coming back sometime this fall, that would be awesome. And regardless, just give us a little rundown of what Gimme 10's all about.
First things first, the reports of our death have been greatly exaggerated. I think that's the quote. But yes, we are coming back in the fall. JT Pokerface, my podcast partner and the creator of Gimme 10, he moved away about 3 years ago. And we tried to do remote episodes, and when he would come back to Birmingham, we would record episodes, but it just wasn't the same, and had lost a little bit of its luster there. So we decided to hang it up, and but lo and behold, he has decided to move back to Birmingham. Thank goodness. So we are going to start back. Date TBD, but hopefully here soon. So everybody, if you're listening to this, please go listen, like, and subscribe to the Gimme 10 podcast. The audio is nothing compared to what Dan Time has got set up here, but we're gonna work on getting that cleaned up. But the format and the subject matters are spectacular, if you ask me. And it started because it's called Gimme 10. Was we did a hard stop at 10 minutes every episode. So no matter what we talked about, we were in and out in 10 minutes. JT's idea. It was JT's idea.
Man, you guys really kept to it. Also, I mean, there's very little variation, especially. I mean, towards the end, I think you kind of just let it fly. But most episodes, you're clocking out at 10:01, 9:59, 10 on the dot. And so, folks, people throw stuff at you. You get recommendations. People text you, "Oh, you got to watch this show. You need to watch this on Netflix. You need to listen to this podcast. You got 10 minutes to just take a shot on something." And if on Gimme 10, and
listen to 12 or 13 episodes, and make your mind up after that. But give it an hour, and 102 hours would be at 12 episodes. So that's. You could get to Auburn and back and listen to 12 10-minute episodes, and then if you don't like it, maybe listen to 10 more episodes. But then after that, if it's still not got you hooked, you can unsubscribe or stop. But yeah, just give us a fair shake. So 40 episodes.
Well, Jim, this has been an excellent reconnect with you. I mean, I say that like we're not going to talk again for the next 2 years, but I got a few little rapid fire questions that I'm probably gonna shoot out at most guests here. Are you listening to a band right now? Is there anything that's really setting your world on fire that you're prepared to say, "Hey, you guys need to check out this song or this group"?
Let me pass and come back to that. And
okay.
I'll be thinking.
What are you watching when it's 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night, and there's not a game on? What are you watching?
Mostly stuff from my DVR, and right now I'm watching What We Do in the Shadows. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a phenomenal. It's one of the funniest TV shows I've ever seen. It's like a mockumentary about vampires who live in Staten Island, New York, shot mockumentary style. So like The Office or This Is Spinal Tap. It's hilarious. So I've been watching that. I go down YouTube rabbit holes a lot too at night. Loved wrestling stories or anything like that. There's all kinds of different YouTube stuff I get into.
Jim, if you had to just stand outside in the middle of your yard and it's either one of these two options, all right, so you're just, let's just say you're in your work clothes. Do you want to stand outside where it's heat index 108 degrees for 30 minutes, or stand out there when it's wind chill of, let's just say, 14 degrees? Which one are you going for?
14 degrees all
Half
day.
An hour.
I think I'm part Viking. Yeah, I do not want to stand in the sun. I do not like the sun.
So you got a button-down shirt on when it's blazing hot. You got that same button-down on when it's frigid cold. No jacket. You're still out there.
Yeah, I can just jump. Yeah, I can jump on. Can I jump on one foot back and forth, get the blood flowing? Yes, I would much rather do that than just stand and have sweat form in places that we can't talk about on a PG podcast.
What is something from 1997 or 1998 that you think was just awesome for being that age at that time that you just feel like kids are missing out on right now? So at that time, we graduated that year. What was cool about the late 90s? We'll just say the late 90s that just ain't so cool right now, or people don't have the same access.
I think we've already kind of touched on it, but I think technology, and especially, communication technology, so cell phones, they're great. Listen, I couldn't live without my phone. But if I could go back to 1997 and just have a phone that gave me directions to places, I think I would be I would love that. If kids these days only had phones that could call people, or if we could pick one of the parts of current technology to take back, it would be Waze or instant directions. Just the fact that you can get in touch with anybody anytime, anywhere, it's just kind of a bummer. So when you go on vacation, do you really feel like you're on vacation when you still have the work email icon pop
Absolutely
up,
Jim, last question. Did you ever have to speak to a girl's dad on the phone because you had to call her house number to talk to her and ask her either out to a date or she's already your girlfriend, and this is just the primary way that you can connect with her after hours?
Yes.
That is never happening ever again for any teenager. He's in the clear. Doesn't have to deal with it anymore.
No. Well, I mean, if he goes to her house to pick her up, if somebody's going to come over to take Ever out, he's going to have to come in and sit and talk to me for a couple minutes before they leave. So I remember several girls' dads being pretty intimidating. I mean, they weren't doing the whole pull out a shotgun and shine it up while we talk, but it was always nerve-wracking. But yeah, you don't have to worry about that nowadays with phone calls.
I remember, I think it was the homecoming dance. This may have been 10th grade. My date to the dance, her dad picked me up at my house. So he's already got my date in the car. So he drops us off at the dance. Mm-hmm. When he picks us up, he drives all the way to their house, drops her off, and then it was like an hour.
You had to drive home and talk
ride. It was long enough. Just
did he get you in the front seat, or did he make you stay in the back?
Seat. And he wasn't too hard on me, but it was just that. Again, this is 1994, so you don't have any phone to fiddle with. You don't have anything to just let me just burn away the time here in this uncomfortable situation. You're just riding with this girl's old man for what seems like an eternity.
Did he talk, or was he
not a big talker? Nice guy. Not I wouldn't even say it was dead end conversations, because I was too frozen to even talk freely or loose with him. But that probably still goes on a little bit. I've got my kids, and it's kind of fun thinking about how you're going to treat the girlfriends and the boyfriends, and I'll be easy on them, but have some fun at the same time.
Yeah, I can see you pulling a lot of legs and messing with guys and gals for sure.
Well, Jim, we could go on and on. We're going to have to do a part 2.
Oh, hey, before you sign me off, I got to circle back to your music question, and it's recently watched the Ken Burns country music documentary from PBS, and if people haven't seen that, they need to search it out. And I've been on a real big golden age of country music kick, so I'm listening to a lot of older I guess Silver Age is what it would be. So Merle and Waylon and George Jones and all those folks. So that's what I've been listening to. So now you can sign off and tell me how great I am again and talk about it.
Well, Jim, since you mentioned that, and I'm going to have to put you to the test here. You want to sing us out with some George Jones, maybe? She Thinks I Still Care, or
Just Because I Asked a Friend About Her.
Perfection.
Oh gosh, that's terrible. You got to cut that out.
All right, Jim Hammer, Gimmie, however many nicknames that you've had over the years. This has been awesome. This has been more than I expected, and hopefully you guys at home or in the car have enjoyed the episode as well. The first episode of Dan Time in the books. Remember, you can look us up on X. It's at Dan Time Pod. We're also on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Jim, I don't know that we talked a lot back in the day, but did we ever have a 40-minute conversation on the phone?
Man, maybe on one of us being on the way to the beach or something, but yeah, I don't think so. This has been great. Thank you so much for having me, Danimal. It's been awesome, and I'm just honored to be the first guest on a podcast dedicated to Dan, speaking with people named Dan.
Jim, thanks for being on, and remember, wait until it is 7:48 at night to go out and cut your grass. Do not give yourself a heat stroke. You guys have a great week, and we will be back next week on Dan Time.